So, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian did congratulate the hospitality industry yesterday for voluntarily closing early before the mandatory closures. Your industry's really done it tough, as other industry has. But how important is it, John, to get ahead of the virus as much as possible in your industry?
Look, I think the praise really needs to go to those venues up on the northern beaches that when we spoke to them, were quick to put their hand up and say, look, if we can make a difference, if we can jump early and that prevents the spread of coronavirus, then, that's the proactive thing to do. It protects both the patrons up on the northern beaches, but also all the other venues and people right across Sydney and New South Wales.
And what have we learned from the Melbourne lockdown and situations like we saw in Adelaide?
Look, obviously, in New South Wales, we shut down for 10 weeks from back in March, serving only takeaways. We know the impact that had on our business back then. 94% of our staff were stood down or let go. We know that if you're back and operating like we are under the 1 in 2 patron 2 square metres rule, that to have to shut down again like Melbourne and then like in Adelaide, it has a devastating impact where you put all your eggs in one basket to try and survive that period. You get back to work and then you've got to shut down again. You've got to put stock out. You've got to put staff off or stand them back down again. So the ramifications are massive, and that's why we thought we needed to jump early.
Huge ramifications and such a flow-on effect. Not only have you got the staff, the guests at the hotels, the pubs, there's also the food supplies, the cleaners, so many more people, not only from a financial point of view, but also mental health perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Pubs are part of the local community, and that's one thing that was reinforced during the lockdown and then over the last few months with the restrictions that we've had. People, obviously, we need to protect them from the coronavirus, but their mental health, their willingness and wish to connect socially with other people, just to stand around, to sit around and talk about anything, to get together with their social groups, sporting groups, is vitally important. And that's why it is important that we do our bit and we continue to work with government and our local community.
And the hotels have been used for people quarantining from overseas. How has this helped economically?
Well, obviously, within the Sydney CBD, the large number of accommodation hotels represented by our arm, the Tourist Accommodation Australia, the quarantine of returning Australians, etc., that's been a massive boost to the economy, but it's also been a massive boost keeping them open, because without that, they would have shut down so many thousands of employees, all sorts of staff, from bar staff to cleaning staff, etc. They all would have been put off. So this has allowed those multi-chain large hotels right across the Sydney CBD to keep operating.
And we're going to be hearing an announcement on flight crew also needing to self-quarantine from next week. What have you heard regarding this?
Yeah, so obviously the number of hotels that will be used for quarantining international flight crews is going to be limited far more. The government is still communicating with the major hotel chains about that. It's obviously going to further control the risk of the spread of the virus, which is so important to particularly the Sydney CBD, but right across Greater Sydney and New South Wales and the country.
We have had some good news with local travel. We've seen a lot of places being booked, fully booked in fact, and hopefully we'll see plenty more of that as well.
Well, absolutely, and that's part of the issue about this. We've seen venues in the last few weeks start to resume some normal trade. We've seen a lot of corporate entities that were probably not going to have their Christmas parties run to have their Christmas parties. We've seen people start to move right across New South Wales and the rest of the country to have their travel because they can't travel overseas for any time soon. So it's been a huge boost for the tourism industry right across New South Wales and other parts. We've actually seen just last week encouraging the 17 to 24-year-olds to take a gap year by heading to regional New South Wales, working in hospitality venues or working fruit picking. So all of those sorts of initiatives will keep the economy ticking over, and that's why we need to nip this in the bud. The Northern Beaches obviously is a tourist destination. From Manly right up to Newport, a lot of people make their holidays there. So we just need to work hard to get this under control.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. And yes, as Gladys Berejiklian mentioned yesterday, congratulating the hospitality industry for voluntarily closing. No doubt we'll be hearing more announcements, more border closures, but you stay well. John Green, Director of Liquor and Gaming Policy of Australian Hotels Association.